The loudest person in the room is usually the weakest. We live in a world obsessed with expressing itself, tweeting thoughts, oversharing plans, posting every move like it's a strategy. But here's the truth no one wants to admit. The people who win don't talk. They move in silence. They let others speak, expose, overcommit, and then they strike. This isn't just about being quiet. This is Machiavelli's game. And if you're still explaining yourself, you're already losing.
You're not losing because you're weak. You're losing because you're loud. While you're explaining, justifying, tweeting, venting, reacting, someone else is sitting in the silence, watching, learning, and moving chess pieces behind the curtain. You think you're being transparent. You think you're being honest. But you're actually broadcasting your weaknesses and binding yourself to strategies you haven't even tested yet. In a world addicted to expression, the real weapon is restraint. This is the noise trap, and almost everyone is caught in it. We live in an era where silence feels like a sin. People measure worth by how much you say, how fast you respond, how openly you share. If you're not posting, you're falling behind. If you're not speaking up, you're invisible. So we talk constantly. We reveal our plans before they're ready. We announce every move before it matters. We react to every provocation as if silence means surrender. And while we're doing all that, the strategist stays quiet. Machiavelli understood something we've forgotten. Silence isn't absence. Silence is control. When everyone is speaking, the one who isn't becomes the most powerful presence in the room. Think of your last argument. How much of it was actually about the words and how much was about the silence between them? Think of your last meeting, your last negotiation, your last social media post. What did you say that you didn't have to? What did you reveal that someone else could now use? Most people confuse transparency with strength. But Machiavelli warned us centuries ago, the more you speak, the more they see. And people always judge more by what they see than what they understand. Appearances win wars, and appearances are shaped more by silence than by speech. Because silence is space, and power lives in space. The constant noise doesn't just expose your thinking, it exposes your intentions. It locks you into promises you haven't thought through. It gives your opponents the blueprint to destroy you. They know what you want. They know how you think. They know where to aim. Meanwhile, the one who listens carefully, coldly, gains the upper hand without ever having to show their own cards. Machiavelli didn't just write about princes and politics. He wrote about human nature. He wrote about how easily we're fooled by noise and how silence can be used to shape perception, disarm enemies, and win without conflict. In modern terms, strategic silence is the cheat code in a world that overshares. Look around. Everyone's busy reacting. We chase validation with opinions. We chase relevance with updates. We chase connection by exposing vulnerability. And what happens? We become predictable, easy to read, easy to counter. Loud people are easy targets. Quiet people are a threat. You may think silence will make you irrelevant. It won't. Silence makes you unpredictable, and unpredictability makes people cautious. When people don't know what you're thinking, they can't plan against you. They walk on eggshells. They second guess. That's leverage. That's pressure. That's power. You don't need to say more. You need to say less. Strategically, every word you say should cost something. Every message you send should be calculated. Every response should serve a purpose. Otherwise, you're just feeding the system that wants to keep you exposed. That's the trap. We think we're connecting when we're just confessing. We think we're standing up for ourselves when we're actually giving away our position. We think we're being authentic when we're actually being studied, sized up, and prepared for defeat. Machiavelli would call this strategic malpractice, because once you say it, you can't unsay it. Once you reveal it, it's ammunition. And the strategists? They don't give away free ammo. This doesn't mean never speak. It means speak only when it helps. Speak only when it forces others to react. Speak only when the silence has done its work, and the impact of your words is undeniable. Think about the most powerful figures you've seen. Not the loudest, but the ones who say little and shift everything with a sentence. They control conversations not by dominating them, but by entering them with precision. Their absence is noticed. Their silence creates tension. When they speak, people lean in. Now ask yourself, when was the last time someone leaned in when you spoke? If you've been shouting to be heard, tweeting to stay relevant, explaining to feel seen, stop. You're in the noise trap, and Machiavelli is offering the way out. Not through louder arguments, not through through more exposure, but through strategic silence. This is the difference between attention and influence. Attention is loud. Influence is quiet. The ones who move the world don't need to explain their every move. They win while others are still talking about winning. The next time you're tempted to react, to speak just to fill the space, pause. Let others reveal themselves. Let them show you where their defenses are soft. Let them talk themselves into mistakes. While you sit, still, silent, ready. That's how wars are won. Not with words, with patience, with silence, with the discipline to hold your tongue until every sentence becomes a move. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more silence, sharpened into a weapon. Every conversation is a transaction. Most people just don't realize what they're paying. You think of just being honest, being open, being expressive. But every sentence is a data drop. Every opinion is a roadmap. Every confession is a future liability. What you're really doing, whether in a meeting, a group chat, or a late-night voice note, is giving someone the blueprint to control you. The more you speak, the more they know. And the more they know, the less power you have. Machiavelli knew this centuries before social media made oversharing fashionable. He didn't see silence as passivity. He saw it as a tool of domination. He wrote, "A prudent man should always follow the paths beaten by great men and imitate those who have been supreme." And the one trait all powerful figures shared, they never revealed more than they had to. Because silence doesn't just protect information, it collects it. When you speak, you expose. When you listen, you learn. While others are talking themselves into corners, over-explaining their moves, you're watching their patterns. You're hearing what scares them. You're learning what they want, what they'll fight for, what they'll fold on. And all of it becomes leverage. Strategic silence flips the power dynamic. Instead of broadcasting your cards, you become the dealer. You control the pace, the tension, the terms. The person who speaks first in negotiation usually loses. Not because they're wrong, but because they reveal their position. They give away intent. They give away need. And need is weakness. The corporate world knows this. Intelligence agencies live by it. The most dangerous people in any room aren't the ones talking. They're the ones quietly storing everything they hear, because when the time comes, they'll use it carefully, brutally. Think about high-stakes interrogations. The goal isn't to scream and shout. The goal is to get the other person to talk. Because once someone starts explaining themselves, they can't stop. And somewhere in that flood of words is a mistake, a truth, a crack. Silence draws that out. Silence creates discomfort. Discomfort makes people fill the void. And in that moment, you learn everything. This isn't just theory, it's measurable. Studies in negotiation and interrogation consistently show that silence increases your control over the conversation. When you respond immediately, you're reacting. But when you pause, even for a few seconds, you create anticipation. You force the other person to wait, to second guess, to wonder what you're thinking. That space, that's where power builds. And yet most people can't stand it. Silence makes them anxious. So they talk and talk and talk until you know everything you need. They hand you the playbook. You just have to stay quiet long enough to read it. So ask yourself, how much have you given away just by trying to feel heard? How many times have you explained your plan, your motive, your fear to someone who now holds the keys to your next move? You thought you were connecting, but you were actually confessing. You don't win power by being understood. You win it by being unpredictable. And unpredictability begins with silence. The moment they know what you'll say, you've already lost. There's a reason kings don't narrate their every thought. Authority isn't built on noise, it's built on weight. And the more you speak, the lighter you sound. Most people think they can talk their way into power, that if they just explain their value well enough, share their vision loud enough, or prove their intelligence in enough words, people will respect them. But real power doesn't work that way. It doesn't shout, it doesn't argue, it doesn't over-explain. It implies, it commands, it waits. When you speak too often or too quickly, you start to seem desperate to be heard, and desperation, whether it's for approval, attention, or agreement, immediately lowers your status. People don't trust leaders who beg to be understood. They follow the ones who don't need to be. Look at history's most commanding figures. Generals, the CEOs, the revolutionaries. They didn't run their mouths in every meeting. They spoke when it mattered, because when every sentence costs something, people pay attention. The Roman Emperor Augustus had a saying, "Make haste slowly." It applied to war, but also to words. He understood that when you move move with restraint, when you speak with care, your presence starts to feel heavier. Like everything you say has a purpose, a weight behind it. But the moment you become predictable or worse, overexposed, you lose that. When you speak too much, you flatten your own mystery. People can't project power onto someone who overexplains. They can't respect someone who's always filling silences with nervous chatter. You don't need to speak to control a room. In fact, the most intimidating person is often the one not talking, because no one knows what they're thinking. And what people don't know, they imagine. And what they imagine, they fear. So the question isn't, how do I sound more powerful? It's, how much power am I giving away by trying to sound powerful at all? True leaders don't prove themselves with noise. They let their silence do the talking. People don't respond to truth. They respond to perception. And silence, strategic silence, builds perception better than any performance ever could. When you speak less, people start making assumptions. And here's the twist. They rarely assume the worst. They assume strength, depth, mystery. They imagine you're calculating, not clueless. Powerful, not passive. Why? Because human psychology fills gaps. When someone doesn't explain themselves, our minds fill in the blanks. And the blanks? They often make you look bigger, sharper, more dangerous than you actually are. That's not deception. That's leverage. Machiavelli understood that perception isn't a side effect of power. It is power. People fear what they don't understand. They respect what they can't fully read. They trust the leader who doesn't talk too much, not because he's friendly, but because he doesn't need to prove anything. Think about this in real life. The loud coworker, dismissed as insecure. The oversharing boss, easier to manipulate. The person who keeps quiet unless it matters. You listen when they finally speak. This is why great leaders, negotiators, even military commanders use silence as a presence. It becomes a form of pressure. It makes others anticipate your words instead of tuning them out. It makes your image heavier than your actual actions. Because once perception is in your favor, you don't have to fight as hard. You don't have to explain yourself. You just have to let your silence do the work. And in that stillness, battles are won before the first move is made. The most powerful moves are often made in silence. Not because silence is passive, but because it's calculated, controlled, deliberate. The strategist who whispers isn't weak, they're dangerous. They know something the noisy world forgets. Power doesn't shout. It doesn't beg to be understood. Power waits, watches, chooses its moment. Machiavelli didn't write for the loud. He wrote for the unseen hand behind the curtain. The person who doesn't need credit, doesn't need attention, and still wins. While others are busy defending their words, explaining their motives, oversharing their next move, the strategist says nothing, and the silence terrifies, because silence forces others to reveal themselves, because silence keeps you free to pivot, to adapt, to strike, because silence makes them wonder, what are you really thinking? In a world of compulsive transparency, silence is the ultimate rebellion. It's not about secrecy, it's about control of the narrative, of perception, of your position on the board. So next time you feel the urge to explain, defend, overshare, stop. Ask yourself, is this for power or for comfort? The masters of strategy already know the answer. They shut up, move pieces, win wars, and those who don't, they talk their way out of victories they never even saw coming. If this made you think differently, don't comment. Don't share. Not yet. Sit with it. Say less. Let others wonder what you're becoming. That's how the real game begins. If you understood the power of what wasn't said today, you're already ahead of most people. Most will scroll, forget, keep talking, but a few will pause and start moving differently. Those are the ones worth watching. If that's you, act like it. Don't comment. Don't explain. Don't broadcast. Just subscribe quietly. Not for updates, but for advantage. Because the next piece we move won't be loud either.